We are live, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Delfell. Okay, council, let's move on with our agenda with adoption of the minutes. So the special council minutes of October 3rd, 2024. Councillor Cherry, Councillor Devlin, all in favor, motion's carried. The regular council minutes of October 8th. So we'll make that motion. Councillor Devlin, Councillor Staplenhurst, all in favor. Motion's carried. And the special council minutes of October 10th. Councillor Devlin, Councillor Lusow, all in favor. Councillor Orlando.
Just in terms of discussion, just seeking clarity, there has been a couple changes on this document here. So this is adopting resolutions and reporting them out to public. And were these just seeking clarity on the date of the resolutions?
October 10th, is that not correct, Ms. Floyd?
The resolutions were made on October 8th.
Okay.
And we reported them out on the 10th.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, clarity? Good. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Any business arising from October 3rd minutes? Any business arising from regular meeting October 8th? Seeing none. Any from the special council meeting of October 10th? Seeing none, we are going to move on. And, bear with me as I go right to recommendations to council. Item 9A. Finance Committee recommendation. Does someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Lusow.
The Finance Committee recommends to Council that the spending initiative to increase conference training and travel budget for Mayor and Council be increased by $15,000 in 2025.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Devlin. Any further discussion on that motion? Councilor Orlando.
Your Worship, real quick, I'm not going to support it, mostly because out of the list of Finance Committee items that were listed, this is directly related to council spending, and I feel that there should have been a little more consultation of council on this one. So as a result, I'm just not going to support it right now.
Okay. Any comments from balance of council? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried, noting Councillor Orlando is opposed. Item number 2, someone put that. Oh, sorry.
Could we please have Director Moore clarify this, items number 2 and 3?
All right. Councillor, Ms. Moore, sorry. If you would like to clarify that before we put the motion on the table.
Thank you. So for motion number 2 and 3, that was the one we all kind of ended a little bit confused. But motion number 2 was defeated, or it wasn't actually seconded in order to get onto the table. And then motion number 3 was the one that was passed by the Finance Committee. My apologies that they're both on there.
Okay. So do we need to go through this? Well, let's deal with motion number 2 first.
No, we don't even need to put that one on there, Your Worship.
Okay. And how about number 3?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Councilor Lusow.
The Finance Committee recommends to Council that the spending initiative to increase conference training and travel budget for administration corporate services be increased by $10,000 in 2025 be deferred to staff.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Cherry, further discussion on the motion. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item number 4. Councilor Lusow.
The Finance Committee recommends to Council that staff provide more information at the next Finance Committee meeting regarding service level shift impacts on user groups.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Devlin. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you for clarification, Ms. Moore. Moving on to bylaws, zoning amendment bylaw 2397. Someone put this motion on the table for me, please. Councilor Cherry.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw number 2397 be adopted.
Seconder for the motion, Councilor Lusow. Any discussion on this motion? So we've gone through all 3 readings and now will be adopted. I will call a question. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Item B, someone put that on the table for me, Councilor Lucas.
I move that business licensing and regulations amendment bylaw number 2398 be adopted.
Seconder for the motion, Councilor Devlin. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to staff reports. This is the economic development report. The Reddit fund that was going to come to us. Ms. Moffat, Mr. Wamau, you've got a presentation that you'd like to do or oversight prior to me calling the question and putting on the
Yes,
table?
thank you, Your Worship. We would just like to do a bit of some brief notes before we take the next step.
Thank you.
Do you want to go through your notes?
Go ahead.
Okay. So just to provide a little bit more background, so this is the third intake of the Reddit grant program, and that's the Rural Economic Diversification Infrastructure Program. We have done this one before. We were successful with the first intake, which we did through the FIT stream, and that was the funding, $500,000 for the Oscar Street Master Planning piece. We have been in contact with the Ministry of Jobs and Economic Development, and we spoke with them about furthering into that stream under FIT. However, because our forestry impact has been minimal compared to a lot of other communities in the province this year, our rate of success through that stream would be very little, if not zero. So we were looking for other opportunities in order to get some grant funding. So the Section 17 lands came up as an opportunity for us.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Moffat before I ask for this motion to be put on the table? Seeing none, Councilor Devlin, I'm going to turn to you. Both Councilor Orlando.
You go for it.
Yeah, Your Worship, I move that an application be submitted to the Government of BC's Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program, REDIP, for funding through the Economic Development Stream and Government of Canada's CanExport Community Investment Funding to support investment attraction that includes a land use feasibility study for the Westside lands, which are subject to Section 17 of the BC Land Act.
Great. Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Devlin. Thank you.
Not hard.
All right, any comments? Councilor Orlando, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, Your Worship, I would encourage council to support this initiative that's came up through rural economic, through the Economic Development Commission. Thanks to staff for presenting on this one. I think there's a lot of opportunity here in the Section 17 lands as they become known over the years. But the discussion we've had at the Economic Development table is that we can find something that matches with the community's needs and really have a robust exploration. I think there's a lot of opportunity right now, and I'm looking forward to seeing staff hopefully have a successful application process and then a subsequent sort of engagement on all of the opportunities that could be available and what is the right fit for us if it moves forward. So I encourage you to support it.
All right, any other comments from council? Councilor Cherry.
Just a question through the chair. What sort of attraction are you looking at with those lands being completely unserviced? See them
Ms. Moffat.
a bit more institutional, I guess, or
Through
industrial?
the chair, actually, we are looking at different, like multiple opportunities there. So in the OCP, it does refer to a data center tech park piece, but it is 130 acres. So we were thinking, keeping in mind housing opportunities, as we know, BC Hydro is going to be going through big construction projects. Maybe they're going to need some opportunity there, or food production, manufacturing. So looking for a best fit for the community, we really want to look for jobs, good paying jobs. That's going to be long term. Because if we do end up transitioning out of forestry, we want to have some other good opportunities for the community. So we're not focusing just on one. But that does depend on the amount we can get for funding. If we only get the Reddit funding, then we're only at about 125,000, so that could limit it. But we could answer the question about the data center piece, which does keep coming back to us. And that's one of the original reasons why the land got put into the Section 17 was from this conversation about data centers. But if we can get the CanExport grant, that gives us 250,000. We can really do an in-depth exploration and then present the information to council so you guys would actually have some kind of good information to make informed decisions, which we know is absolutely key here. So we're looking at multiple opportunities.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Councilor Rolando?
Yeah, your worship, there's all kinds of opportunities and especially looking at specifically addressing the infrastructure question. Certainly that's on the radar, and there's potential opportunity to leverage an opportunity to provide infrastructure. How that will look will really depend on the scoping that happens through this process, but certainly, water and sewer over the bridge is a possibility at one point in the future, but I think it really relies on us doing our groundwork and exploring all of the opportunities, and I'm excited to see what we'll come up with.
Can I just add one more comment to that too? With technology developing on utilities such as sewer and water, there could be an opportunity for like a mini plant too out in those lands. So that's something we would look at if we can't get servicing all the way there, but we would be in discussions with the engineering department for sure on those pieces.
Absolutely.
All right. Want to call a question? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Item number 2.
Sure, I'm willing to bring that forward. The recommendation be made to the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Board to allocate $12,500 to support the Government of BC's Rural Economic Development Infrastructure Program REDIP grant for investment attraction that includes land use feasibility study for the Westside lands, which is subject to Section 17 of the BC Land Act.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Lucero. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Moffat, Mr. Watmo, appreciate it. Moving on to item 12B, staff reports, Community Fire Smart and Resilience Committee establishment. Chief DeRossi, you're here and Ms. Marfleet's online. So you have a bit of a presentation or an overview?
We don't have a presentation for council, just to support council on any questions that they may have in this request for a Community Fire Smart and Resiliency Committee.
All right.
And Ms. Marfleet is online to assist with any questions you may have.
Perfect. Appreciate that. All right. Can I get someone to put this motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Devlin?
I will move that the creation of a Community Fire Smart and Resiliency Committee be supported, and that the terms of reference for the Community Fire Smart and Resiliency Committee dated October 22nd, 2024 be approved.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Staples. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Staples.
I have a question in regards to the committee. As we're looking to restructure the committees as they stand, why wouldn't this fall under the Revelstoke Area Emergency Committee? I'm sorry if I don't have the name.
Yeah. So basically, Ms. Marfleet, comment on that, but my understanding is
Sure.
that,
I can speak to that.
Go for it.
So this will be a committee that is going to only oversee fire smart activities, initiatives, wildfire resiliency through the Fire Smart programming and also Fire Smart funding. So it does kind of overlap with emergency management, some of it, but most of it isn't. Most of it is actually preventative activities that are going to be hopefully carried out within the city to prevent wildfire.
Okay. Will this also include a portion of Area B CSRD as well?
No, actually, CSRD has Fire Smart, has their own CWRP and Fire Smart programming for Area B. I do talk interchangeably with the CSRD, and we do back each other up and come to some sort of agreement time to time on different initiatives that we're working on. And that's why we also wanted to have them as a part of the committee as well.
All right, thank you. Does that answer your question, Councilor Stigmers?
Yes, I just have my reservations in regards to adding another committee when it could be substructured under the existing committees, but that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay. Chief Rosen.
Just to follow up, Your Worship, the two committees have very similar on principle, but very separate structure and funding sources as well. So they do need to be quite separate committees with specific agendas or terms of reference attached to those.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you for that,
That's
thank you for that
a little clearer.
clarification. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Mayor Sauce. Additionally, this committee is community oriented, so I think that's the key. Where the emergency management is more organization oriented.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
All right, Councillor Lucia, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Stoles. Just a question with the terms of reference, why the BC Wild Service, RMR, and First Nations are highlighted in yellow under the key partners not voting. Ms. Berkeley?
Actually, I think that was just something on the sheet. I don't know. It was just in the actual sheet, but it wasn't any purpose on my end why it's in yellow.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Marfleet and Chief Rose, I appreciate that. All right, we are going to move on to engineering. Item C, active transportation infrastructure grant application. Mr. Black, I think you intentionally make these titles long. Oh,
They're just
wow, there we go. Emily.
Yeah, engineering has been working with our consultant McElhaney to come up with a multi-use pathway on Perks Drive that would run from the existing green belt at the end of Allen Road up to Colbeck Road, where it intersects with Perks by Columbia Park Elementary. This was presented to Public Infrastructure Committee last week, and they've made a recommendation to council that council support us in moving forward with a grant application to the BC, Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant. So I am here today to answer any questions you have, and I can talk about it in more detail if you would like.
Okay, so this motion on the table for me, Councillor Lucia.
I move that an application for funding to be used towards construction of a section of multi-use pathway on Perks Drive from the Greenbelt connection at Allen Road to Colbeck Road under the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program be endorsed and submitted by October 31st, 2024.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Stapenhurst. Any other questions for Ms. Lindsay? That easy. You guys know all about the MOPS. All right. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. All right, we're going to move on to short-term rental update. So, Mr. Simon, is this something that you're going to give us a little presentation or an oversight on?
Through your worship, staff have prepared a presentation. It's in the agenda package. I'll leave it up to council whether or not you wish to hear me speak. If not, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to hear him speak.
I would also.
Yeah, me too.
So we have a vote on whether or not we want to.
I'll stand back here though.
He was gone for a while.
You want me to fiddle with the cord?
Picture of this pinata face out there.
Yeah, it's knocked over. Thank you, council. So before you today is a presentation on short-term rental, and the gist of it is we're going to be asking for council direction whether or not you would like us to reopen and relitigate the short-term rental conversation as part of the department's 2025 work plan. So we'll start off with a little bit of background, how we kind of got to where we are right now to refresh everyone's memory, go into the discussion and conclude with the staff recommendation as well as alternative options for council. So just a bit of background, what is our current framework for short-term rentals in this community? So in April 2022, under the previous council, we did do what I would refer to as kind of a minor update and major cleanup of the short-term rental regulations in our zoning bylaw, business license bylaw, municipal ticket information bylaw. What we essentially did is we clarified short-term rental uses. We had about 10 different ways to describe it in the bylaw, very confusing for everyone. Clean that up. We expanded whole home short-term rental allowances to single family dwellings within the downtown area, as well as the Victoria Road corridor zoning area. And we expanded short-term rental allowances with a caveat that there has to be a permanent resident on-site operator. So think of it as you're living in the suite, renting out above, or vice versa, living above, renting out the suite. We expanded that to 59 properties along Hay Road. That's kind of sandwiched between the resort and Mackenzie Village as a bit of a trial, as well as the downtown fringe property. So 40 some odd dwellings in that area. These changes built upon historic approvals that the city had undertaken, usually between 2010 and 2016, 2017, where I'm sure there's a couple council members that remember the marathon public hearings of spot zoning applications where neighbors were coming in and having a great discussion about whether or not a property should be specifically zoned to accommodate the short-term rental. And in addition, the city had various, I believe we had 6 comprehensive development zones that were established just to permit whole home short-term rentals, and those CD zones allowed it within multi-unit dwellings. So we have a pretty big convoluted framework of short-term rental. As much as we've tried to clean it up as much as possible, it's reflective of the nature of changes that have occurred over the last decade and a half now. Then the province comes in October 26, 2023 and passes Bill 35, the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act. As a refresher of the main things that this bill ultimately accomplished, it increased fines from $1,000 to $3,000 per offense, or rather it increased the ability to have those fines in your municipal ticketing information bylaw. Staff are currently working on this. Mr. Gibson and his team, as part of a comprehensive review of the MTI bylaw, will be looking at adding that in, and that would go beyond short-term rentals. It would be for any offense, could be a minimum charge of $3,000 or up to $3,000, I should say. Requires all short-term rentals, including bed and breakfast, to register with a new provincial platform. This data is shared with municipalities. Excellent for us. It's been some of the hardest data for us to get, and we used to have to pay for it. Now we don't have to. And it also includes a delisting process that our bylaw enforcement team has been actively engaged in since this platform came to fruition. It removes, quite critically, protections for lawful non-conforming short-term rentals. So historically, if a property was able to do a short-term rental, the city comes in, changes zoning regulations, they would then be protected as a grandfathered quote-unquote property. That protection has been removed now. So if the city wants to update zoning bylaws, people have to conform with those new requirements. They are not protected as grandfathered properties. And then lastly, and potentially most controversially, province implemented a principal residence requirement where you can't operate a short-term rental unless it's out of your principal residence, which is just simply defined as the place where you spend the majority of your time. However, for Revelstoke, because we are designated as a resort municipality, we were exempt from this requirement. However, council does have the ability, if they choose, to opt in. It's on an annual basis, and as a refresher of the timelines, council would need to be opt in by March of every single year, which would allow us to be fully implemented by November. So you give your direction to the province in March, it comes into effect in November. So how do we kind of get to me standing in front of you today? We presented an overview of this to you guys back on January 9th. At that time, excuse me, staff had many projects on the go, and we didn't have the capacity to take on relitigating the short-term rental regulation question in time to actually give some valuable insight to council within 2024. So council did defer a decision to complete a comprehensive review of the STR regulations until October 2024, which came up very, very fast now. And what you guys ultimately directed us to do was prepare a report detailing the status of implementation of the new provincial legislation, as well as detailing a summary of a work plan of how this could be embedded into the Development Service Department's 2025 ultimate project obligations that we are going to be looking at. So that is what we are talking about today. Something that I think is pretty important for council and the community, and it's nice because this is a public presentation, getting some data. We need to have good data for council and the community to be aware of how short-term rentals impact this community, both positively and negatively. And if we don't have good data, we're not going to be able to make a good decision moving forward. So here's some data for you guys right now. We got 66 single detached homes that are currently built that are eligible to be used as short-term rentals, whole home rentals. We got 457 multi-unit homes, row homes, condos, etc., that are eligible to be used as short-term rentals. And then we have another 101 single detached homes that can be used as short-term rentals when there is that permanent resident on-site operator. So right now we have about 624 STRs that are eligible to be used for short-term rental. They're not all operating as an STR, but they have the zoning, the ability to do it legally in some way, shape, or form. This represents just under 16% of our total dwelling stock. So, we looked at our 2021 census data, looked at all the units that have gotten occupancy between then and now, and that's how we got to this 16%. Critically important, it shows how these short-term rentals are kind of hyper-focused in certain areas of the community. When you take out the Comprehensive Development 17 zoning, otherwise known as Mackenzie Village, as well as the RMR area, it's only about 5.2% of all dwellings in the city are eligible to be used as an STR, with about half of them having that permanent resident on-site operator requirement. How does this compare to hotel rooms in the city? Based on 2023 data we had that I believe the chamber had shared, we got 1,320 hotel rooms in Revelstoke right now. So with STRs, we got about 1,950 accommodation units in the city, with about 1/3 of them being STRs. How many licenses have we issued? We got 44 licenses for B&Bs, and I should note all the stats on the previous page about eligibility for short-term rental does not include bed and breakfast. So we got 44 B&B licenses and 190 STR licenses. So this shows about 70% of those that are eligible to operate as a short-term rental have licenses for it. Now you're probably saying 190 out of 624 doesn't equal 70% approximately. Keep in mind, when we look at the 234 units at the Sutton Place at the resort, they only need 1 license right now. They don't need 234 licenses. So it gives you an idea if all those units are in operation. About 70% of everyone who's eligible to do STR is legally doing one right now. As of September 24th this year, the city had opened 219 files utilizing the provincial platform for noncompliance, with about 185 of those closed to date. And if you guys want to delve into what those numbers actually mean, there is some details in the staff report, and Mr. Gibbs is here to answer any questions as well. He's been working with the bylaw officers quite closely on this. They've been doing a great job. So where do we go from here? Gives you a bunch of background information about what we've done, how we've gotten to where we are, and some basic data. If council is directing us to reopen this short-term rental conversation, we have prepared a project plan that shows how we could do it. I will say right off the bat, it will be a complex and contentious undertaking. I don't think I've ever seen such a contentious planning related issue as I have with short-term rentals in this community. So what would we want to achieve as part of this project? What are the main objectives? So there's 4 main objectives we've outlined. We want to improve community understanding of the existing STR framework. It is complicated, as well as the provincial legislation, which is also complicated. Needless to say, we just have an election right now that is a little bit uncertain, so we don't know how the provincial rules could change in the future. We want to provide objective information to council and the community on the implications associated with being very restrictive of short-term rentals, including but not limited to opting into that principal residence requirement. If we opt in and we really crack down on STR, what are the implications for businesses in this community and those that rely on short-term rental income? We want to establish a clear objective of what the community is seeking to achieve by updating short-term rental regulations. We'll delve into this a bit more later on, but that is a crucial piece of this project. And lastly, we want to create a more clear and comprehensive short-term rental regulatory framework in Revelstoke. Some of the key deliverables, obviously community engagement will be critical for this issue. As I indicated, it is a very contentious issue in the community. We'd be looking at having at least 2 to 4 public info sessions, 1 to 2 community surveys. This can definitely be adjusted as the project is unfolding. And one thing I will say is staff aren't going to bring forward amendments if council doesn't feel that the community has been consulted adequately. So don't think that you're completely locked into this. We can make changes and be adaptable as we go through this project, should council direct us to do the project. Really critically, we got to do an economic analysis. Once we kind of figure out what is the main goal we're hoping to achieve by updating our STR regulations, what are the different scenarios about how we can go about achieving that goal? And what are the implications of those scenarios? We collect MRDT taxes that go into our online accommodation platform fund. We collect business license revenue. There's obviously an economic spin-off effect associated with short-term rentals. What are the implications if we clamp down and 50% of them close overnight? And then lastly, we'd be bringing forward amendments to the zoning bylaw, business licensing bylaw, municipal ticket information bylaw, fees and charges bylaw, as well as the prior council policy DS-23 to implement the new regulations. And amending that policy is quite critical because hopefully if council directs us to do this project, at the end, we've answered whether or not opting in or opting out of this principal residence requirement is in the interest of the community. We can embed that into policy. And then hopefully there's some level of certainty for this community that council's not going to flip-flop every time there's an election, because that's quite critical associated with this too. How would this be phased and what does the timing look like? So phase 1 would be October to March, kind of background review, project management, and initial engagement. You'll notice we're not really recommending any major work to be done other than background review, best practice analysis between now and February. We have to get the zoning bylaw wrapped up. And if we start going out to engage the community at the same time we're at the 5-yard line of the zoning bylaw, there's going to be confusion. So kind of try to tackle one big project at a time. We'd be looking between March and July, different scenario development, looking at council giving us feedback on that key goal we want to achieve with this project, the economic analysis, refinement of scenarios, bylaw drafting through the summer, and then ultimately, hopefully in the final quarter of 2025, having all these amendments ready for council to consider. So you can see it will take time to unpack this project and to get it done. And if council ever did choose to opt into this principal residence requirement, the earliest you'd be looking at doing it would be March 2026, which means it would be in effect for November 2026. A very nice gift for the next council that will be coming in. So public engagement, obviously a critical component of this. We look at the IAPP engagement spectrum, the International Association of Public Participation, at what level of engagement we kind of want to target for this. We'd be recommending kind of going right down the middle, that involve category. So you're working directly with the public throughout the process to make sure that their concerns and aspirations are understood and considered. We're not going all the way to the end where the final decision is, through referendum, but very important that we do proper engagement with the community is a contentious issue. So we have to try and bring people together on this. Some of the key milestones, as indicated, between October and February, it would be a lot of background analysis, reviewing with other municipalities, providing more information and data to council. We'd be looking at having an initial public info session in February to kick off the project, make sure the community is aware at all the avenues that they can participate. And then as we continue to work through this, there would obviously be other avenues for them to come to these public information sessions. One of the really key milestones I've alluded to that is worth pointing out in the conversation today is this April 2025 one. If we are going down this road of updating our STR regulations, staff can't propose any amendments if we don't answer one simple question from the community and via council resolution. What are we trying to achieve? What is the goal? And I think one of the challenges we had last time when we did the STR update was we were going to achieve everything. We were going to protect long-term rentals. We were going to allow locals to participate in the tourism economy. We were going to create a level playing field with hoteliers and STR operators. We have to be really specific. And if council gives staff that direction, here's the one goal we want to achieve based on what we've heard from the community. You guys tell us the what, we can come back with here's how we can ultimately achieve that. And here's the implications with the different avenues to achieve it. But if we don't know that main goal we're trying to achieve, then we're going to be in the exact same situation we were last time, where we have amendments that aren't 100% reflective of the goals and aspirations of this community. So just quickly, some of the administrative implications, you guys are probably tired of hearing about it, but it will be a complex, contentious project. It is going to take significant in-house staff resources to go through this. And something to keep in mind, if we are successful in our Housing Accelerator Fund application, we're hoping to hear back by the beginning of December, then that will be priority for us to meet those initiatives in the HAF application, and there is potential to delay this project. To counter that, transparency, open communication with the public. Same thing we've done with the zoning bylaw. We've had a couple delays with that project. We've been making sure everyone is following that project is well aware of those delays and why there has been delays. So that's probably too much of me talking now. So staff recommendation is that this would be embedded into the 2025 department work plan. I do want to note for council, however, there is obviously an alternative staff recommendation that we be directed to not incorporate this into the work plan, which means the status quo, the existing regulations would prevail. And one thing to note, and this is very, very fresh, obviously, we have a contentious provincial election right now. We have one party that is hinting that they would repeal Bill 35, which would have major impacts for this project. So that should be something that in my opinion, comes into the consideration of council today. If we start going down this road and spending time and energy and resources on this project, and then there is a flip that's beyond our control, there will be implications for this project. And I can only imagine the confusion that it would sow within this community if we start going down this road and then all of a sudden Bill 35 is repealed and we have to change course. But we will be adaptable. So thank you. That concludes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mr. Simon. So I just have a couple of questions right off the bat, and I think you nailed the last statement about Bill 35 and the election. But I want to go to Mr. Gibson dealing with the enforcement. And so when I see that we've got 185 files that are closed, that means that you were able to work out those issues, or whatever people, let's say they were already illegally operating, they're no longer operating. What does that exactly mean? Can you answer that one?
Absolutely. Excuse me. So a bulk of the 185 there, well, as a whole, there's 119 files that were identified by the bylaw enforcement team. The 185 were the we'll call them the easier ones. Those that were operating, they typically had a license, but they weren't listing their, including their license number within the listing, which is a requirement under Bill 35, as well as within our bylaw regulations. So bulk of those were improperly addressed, or sorry, improperly labeled, operating outside of the conditions of their licenses. So we were able to work with the individuals to try to get them into compliance. We do have a little bit more of a breakdown in there within the actual report, give a little bit more details. But essentially, all 219 of those files received a notice of non-compliance. And then the 185, some of them were the initial people who reached out and said, yes, we will add in that business license number right away. We'll address that issue. That resolves that matter. And then there were a few others that were operating without licenses. 9 fines were issued in total for, out of those that resulted in, they were at $500 a piece. And then I believe it was 16 new license applications were received as a result of that enforcement campaign as well. So those were short-term rentals that were operating without business licenses, that once they were identified, they said that initial warning notice, they either took down the listings themselves, or we then subsequently put in a takedown request, which resulted in them coming into the district collier to actually apply for their licenses.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, Mr. Simon, if I say to you, if council says to you, we want this to be put into our work plan, and we're a year into this, you're getting all the information, about to present it, of a new election. My question is I'll try not to be crude, but are we wasting money with that? Or is that information that we're going to need to develop in any event, even if we haven't made a decision?
Your Worship, there is merit for us updating our regulations to try and simplify the framework.
Right.
Most certainly. So I wouldn't say that it's totally wasted. And keep in mind, right now, I think we've put in there about a $70,000 proposed budget.
Right.
25 to 35 would probably be spent on that economic analysis, and then a portion of the director's wages, my wages, are coded to capital. So that's to cover the in-house costs associated with it. But I don't want to, even if it's $50,000, that's still a good chunk of money that we want to make sure we're spending very wisely and respecting the taxpayer dollar. It's really hard to say. I mean, we will get valuable data out of this, and we will make sure that that economic analysis is broader than just here's the impact of opting in and not opting in. And that's a really key piece of this. We don't want it to be a referendum on opting in or not opting in. We want it to be, what are we trying to achieve? Once we've sorted that out, here's the different ways we can achieve that. And if there's a change in provincial legislation, we still can go forward with changes. We just have to be mindful to keep them in line with that change in provincial direction.
Okay, thank you for that. And so when we went through this a year ago, and put things in place, and we talked about this back in January, we talked about coming forward in October to our community and basically saying, hey, we're going to come up with some way of planning. So I think our community is looking to us to make a decision today that says, hey, we're gonna do something, but we need that work plan. So I'm supportive of that recommendation. However, I want to hear from council around the table as to what they feel and what they say, because they're out there as well. Councillor Devlin, start.
Yeah, I'll shoot first. I think I've been fairly vocal on short-term rentals in the past, so may as well keep that going. No, I'm in support of this. I do feel that we can very easily, at least from my perspective, tell from the community that this is a conscientious issue, and this is conscientious for a reason. Like, this is, people aren't happy with the way this is being done across the board. Some people aren't happy because they would like more opportunities to participate. Other people aren't happy because they feel that it takes away from housing, and whatever side of the seesaw you lie on there, I think there is some merit to coming up, even if we don't specifically change a lot in the end of it. I think having that data, showing how we got to that data, simplifying the process and the language around it is always going to be beneficial to us. And I think that data is really the most important part, because at least then we can look at the community and say, you know, we didn't ignore it. We didn't ignore that people weren't happy with it, and we came up with something. I mean, we can't simply shut down what we do on a city because there might be a different provincial government. As much as that, sometimes with the 180s on potential legislation, but that's my opinion on that.
All right,
I think that's worth doing.
Other councillors want to weigh in? Councillor Lennon?
Trying to give everyone an opportunity to go first. Your worship, just a few questions and comments. First one was I did send a letter emailing through Mr. Parliament requesting some additional data focused on enforcement. I was wondering if staff has had a chance to review that.
I'll defer to Mr. Simon.
Through your worship, yes, our bylaw compliance officer, who has been most heavily involved in this, did provide us some info. You want to do it or you want me to? Okay, so the first question, if through your worship I may just kind of run through it, if that's okay with all the council. So breakdown of complaints-based versus staff initiative files. So on business license advertising violations, all 219 of them have been staff initiated. Other STR violations, 16, all pertaining to bed and breakfast licenses, units being utilized as short-term rental. No on-site resident was the main issue there. And then one unlicensed, not using major platforms for advertising. Looking at some definitions like on things like takedown requests, voluntary removals, and forced removals. Takedown request just simply refers to utilizing the portal to which an email is sent to the host website, informing them that the advertisement is in violation of the business licensing bylaw. Voluntary removals are, again, when the operators themselves, they've been informed of the non-compliance and then they voluntarily remove it. And then a forced takedown is exactly like it sounds, when they have not voluntarily removed the request as we work through the provincial platform, and they are forced to take it down through that avenue. Numbers and totals for warnings, fines issued. All 219 files did receive a warning in the notice of non-compliance, and 9 fines have been issued for failure to display a business license, amounting to $500 each per fine, utilizing our new bond bylaw, the adjudication bylaw. Staff assessment of effectiveness of current enforcement framework and suggestions. So the bylaw enforcement officer, I can give you his take on it, and it is time consuming, especially at the beginning with all the cross-referencing and data validation that had to occur. But they are seeing some efficiencies being captured through the process. I will say it is effective. We are happy with the provincial platform right now. We are hoping that they continue to make improvements throughout as we continue utilizing it. The delisting process, we were happy that they incorporated some of the feedback we provided when they were building the platform. But like everything, as long as the province continues to invest resources and time and energy into it, it will only make it more improved. And a lot of it depends as well on our approach for how we manage short-term rentals in terms of its effectiveness. If council's direction at the conclusion of this project is be as restrictive as you possibly can on enforcement, you will see us coming forward with Ms. Moore for budget requests associated with the bylaw enforcement group. There will be implications, make no doubt about it. There will be financial implications. So it all depends on what direction we go to manage STR. And then staff summary of current approach and workings on enforcement, including interface with the province. On this specific issue, the bylaw team does feel that utilizing the portal has been excellent. It's nice to have kind of a one-stop shop for it. We were using host compliance previously, and it was a clunky system. It was as good as it was going to get. But the way that the province has built it and forcing everyone who's advertising on any platform to register now with this central database and to share data with us is quite nice. And not to mention it saves us $15,000 a year on our software expenses. The majority of interface with the province is done utilizing the portal, but their staff, according to our bylaw enforcement officer, have been quite responsive whenever we have needed them. So it's going quite well right now.
Follow up, Councilor?
You actually know that's excellent, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for the response. I have if you may, Your Worship, another question unrelated, and this is actually a follow-up to the presentation, a thought that I had there. I was wondering if staff, through the chair, I was wondering if staff could provide a summary of the Bill 35 removes protections for legal non-conforming STRs. I've got lots of background on Bill 35 and sat in a bunch of the info sessions, so I feel pretty solid on that. My question is very specific to this, we are undergoing a zoning bylaw change right now. So the question is, where are we at right now on this issue, and where will we be after we pass the zoning bylaw next year? So just in sort of layman's terms, what's going to be the unique result of us being in the process of our zoning bylaw overhaul?
Councilor Orlando, really good question. We will not be taking away any short-term rental development rights through the zoning bylaw. Now, you will notice it's required us to get creative to make sure that people's existing STR allowances are not lost as we are doing this major update and consolidating zones and getting rid of zones. So as we bring forward that zoning bylaw comprehensive rewrite, you'll see some zones will have a section that says site-specific amendments, and it will say on this particular lot, you're allowed to do X, Y, and Z with respect to short-term rental. It's no new allowances. It's recognizing their existing allowances. They have to make sure that they're not lost. Now, the change that the province made, if we didn't do that, historically, they would have been protected as a grandfathered legal non-conforming use. Now, they would not enjoy that protection and they would be subject to full compliance of the bylaw, and if not, subsequent enforcement matters. So it's a really big deal. I've never seen this happen in any province. The grandfathered provisions are usually pretty ironclad, and to specifically take them out for one particular use is unprecedented.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Council, one last time.
Yeah, Your Worship. So to clarify, and I don't need to comment just other than affirmation, that by including the notation related to the grandfathering, we are essentially adding that grandfathering to each of them in our new way of expressing it. In effect, that does enshrine the those rights that are currently there through the bylaw rewrite process.
Through Your Worship, Councilor Orlando, I would characterize it as carrying forward existing STR allowances. You may recall some time ago now, February 23, two main things we weren't touching as a result of the zoning bylaw project. Number one, short-term rental, and number two, major changes in development rates downtown. Both of those are so big that they warrant their own specific project to inform zoning amendments. Project we're talking about today will inform, if council directs us to do so, short-term rental changes to the zoning bylaw. But everything that's in the zoning bylaw you guys will be considering hopefully early in the new year is a carry forward from the existing allowances. None of them have been taken away, none of them have been expanded. They're exactly as they are. They just might be written a little bit differently.
So much. And Your Worship, one more question that's not directly related to this. And it was alluded through the chair, it was alluded to in the presentation, and that is related to the positive benefits of engaging in this process. If council were to not engage in the primary principal residence requirement opt-in, I'm seeking pros and cons list from staff, whether it would be worth it. And just to add a sort of a comment before I release the question is that if an opinion is maybe we don't have the numbers to do that, so that even if we engage in this process at the table here, we're not going to get to, even if we call the question after before March 2026, this is scheduled to end in December, January 2025, 2026. So we've got one window before the next election at this council. I don't know if we have the numbers to do that. So we'll be engaging in a community engagement process on a contentious issue with everyone, I think, agrees, where I don't know if we're really going to be moving a lot on that. And if we also engage in that in the way this is set up, we are going to be essentially further enshrining through our zoning bylaw the rights that people have through existing zones, areas, spot zoning, etc. So if we were to go forward with that, we're actually putting a sort of a legal challenge in our own way if we were to go that through the process. And that's specifically looking at timing. So my thought is, if we were to not do this, if we were to not opt in, what benefit or utility is there for staff to engage in? Does staff think there is to engage in this process?
Mr. Simon.
Through your worship, just to clarify, you're asking if there's benefit in doing the projects, if the principal residence discussion and opt-in discussion was kind of taken off the table.
Absolutely.
I would say that there is still benefit. We have a convoluted framework. The amount of times we have to explain the short-term rental regulations to individuals, and it's no one's fault. It's just a result of different councils, different planning staff, and changing circumstances in the community over the last 15 years. There is benefit to further cleaning up our framework. And when we brought this forward in 2021, 2022, the original amendment to the bylaw was allow short-term rental everywhere, but with this principal residence requirement on site. Some people in the community were happy with it, some people weren't. I think it's worth having the conversation with the community whether or not there is desire to expand or shrink short-term rental allowances, regardless of this principal resident opt-in, opt-out. And the way we want to tackle this project, again, we don't want it to be a referendum on opting in or opting out. We want it to be, how does everyone come together to share a common vision of what is our goal with having short-term rentals in this community so that it's positive for this community. And once we get that, then staff can come up with the different scenarios that say, here's how we can achieve that. And each scenario would say, to achieve it on this end of the spectrum, we would be opting into the principal residence requirement, we would be amending our zoning bylaw to do X, Y, and Z, and here's the implications. Option 2 would be don't opt in, amend the zoning bylaw to X, Y, and Z, here's the implications, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't want it to just be focused on one thing. Like, let staff come up with the policy tools to achieve what the community and council is directing us to achieve. And then we can have objective conversations about the impact of those different policy tools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Stapenhurst, I'd like to go around the table and hear from all of you. So Councillor Stapenhurst, do you feel comfortable in weighing in at this point?
Certainly, I'm not sure there's much more to add to the conversation. I think the biggest concern right now is what's happening with the province with the election, and then whether or not we repeal this. That being said, I think as a resort municipality, I think it would be extremely beneficial for council to know the pros and cons of having SCRs in our community. I think to know that the economic impact of it would certainly be beneficial information. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Cherry?
Thanks, Mayor Sauls. Part of me kind of wants to defer this until we actually have an answer from the provincial government. But after hearing Mr. Simon's, Director Simon's discussion about all of the other issues that were labeled in there, I'm wildly in favor of going ahead just from an educational purpose, from having the economics, and from cleaning up all of our wording.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lucen?
Thank you, Mayor Schultz. I kind of have to echo how the other councillors are feeling. I think having the economic analysis done so we can make an informed decision one way or the other is going to be beneficial regardless of how the election plays out. And I think the zoning bylaw update needs to be done first. So we just don't want to bog down development services with trying to push this forward faster.
Perfect. All right, thank you all for your comments. So there is a motion in our package that confirms what we want here, and Councillor Devlin, or Councillor Orlando, you have a question before I ask for that?
I thought you were going around the table.
I already heard from you guys, did I not?
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought.
Do you have anything else you
That's
want to ask?
questions of staff, yeah.
If you got something else you want to ask, by all means, now's the time.
No, I was hoping to provide a comment as
Okay, well,
understood, yeah.
make the comment.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that, you know, if expressing the opinion that I doubt we're gonna get the numbers at a council table to move forward with adopting the principal residency requirement, and that's an opinion, I could be right or wrong on this one. I think what needs to be said out loud is that if you are in favor of going forward with that residential requirement, the council members are in favor of going forward with that requirement, I think what would happen by taking this direction is you would effectively be hemmed in and not have an opportunity to do that anymore, because you would essentially be allowing for the continuation of the protections for legal non-conforming, the grandfathering in the new zoning bylaw. And that would create a barrier for any subsequent direction to remove that one. And so I think moving forward with council that that is going to end up not happening. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that, and that's something I'm just trying to point out here. I think there is utility in moving forward with this in some senses, but my sense is what it's going to do, the result is probably going to say, you know, there's pros and cons to things, and it's not going to present a clear direction. My worry is that this has been so contentious in the public, and we engage with it. The last engagement issue we did with the community, I think, was excellent, what staff did, the one night session to look at Bill 35. But my concern is that if we go through this, community members might be jaded and or elated, depending on their opinion on the situation, about whether or not this engagement is going to bear much fruit. My comment is, you know, I'm fine to move forward with it, but if there are other options for this, there's amendments, and now is the time for council members if they would like to seek another direction. But I think just fair warning that I think we are setting a course that would ultimately lead to no change this council term. And I think we need to live with that and not as an opinion, not pretend that there is going to be any alternative to that, barring, you know, council making, you know, individual initiative resolution in the near short term as well. And last one question, if I may have staff, regarding the final election result, which is up soon, we're not going to spend any money before we have a chance to reel this back if the result changes. Is that true?
Through your worship, happy coincidence that we wouldn't be starting to spend money until the new year.
Okay,
A couple of reasons. We need to make sure that the budget is fully approved by council.
Yeah.
That's why it would really just be in-house staff time.
Mhm.
So it would be my time that is wasted if there is a change.
Thank you. All right.
I need some clarification
Go.
again. Councilor Lando, can you clarify how you started that? I think you stated or were alluding to that the provincial legislation would be trumped by our zoning bylaw? Is that what you're saying? Because if we look at legal challenges down in Kelowna, those were all thrown out.
No, what I'm saying is that in our zoning bylaw rewrite, which will theoretically come to a conclusion well before we are finished this process, as Mr. Simon explained, we are writing in with all of the properties, I believe all of them that are zoned, or might be wrong here, that have an STR grandfathering of some kind, that we will put in additional wording that will allow them to continue, so that if we were to opt in to the principal residency requirement after that date, we would have in effect put a barrier in front of ourselves for that decision. So it puts a thing. So I don't know if there's any clarification through staff if I'm wrong on that. So.
I believe for clarification then, I believe that the legislation removed the grandfathering clause for all STRs.
Through your worship to all of council, Separate out the principal residence requirement and the legal non-conforming changes that the province made to the Local Government Act. The legal non-conforming changes mean that they aren't protected if you did have a legal non-conforming, i.e. grandfathered short-term rental. So what happens is council makes changes to zoning bylaws all day long across municipalities in BC. Uses change over time. You may have been permitted to do a short-term rental a year ago. The city updates its zoning bylaw, says we're taking all short-term rentals out of there. Historically, you would be allowed to continue operating your short-term rental as long as you didn't cease that activity, your grandfather. But with this change, you would not be allowed to continue operating. With our zoning bylaw rewrite, we aren't legalizing any legal non-conforming grandfathered short-term rentals. We don't really have any in the community. We are just carrying forward the existing short-term rental development rights.
The
So
spot
you-
zoning.
Exactly, you have a spot zone property, you have a comprehensive development zone, where right now you're legally permitted to operate a short-term rental. We're not changing that, we're carrying it forward. One thing we have done is we've made the regulations a little bit more clear and a little bit more easily accessible. So the council does direct us as part of this project, if at the end you say, we want to take away STR rights for X, Y, and Z properties that historically had them and now they're not protected as grandfathered properties, it's that much easier to amend the zoning bylaw. And this is where, as we delve into this project, the different scenarios that we have, you'll see staff providing really good details on what each scenario would entail. Amend section X, Y, and Z of the zoning bylaw to remove X, Y, and Z uses. So just to be really clear, we're not legalizing any non-conforming grandfathered short-term rentals. We don't really have any in this community. The zoning bylaw is only carrying forward existing development rights as they relate to short-term rental. Does that make sense?
Councilor Cherry follow.
Can you comment or provide any info on any of the legal challenges that were in Kelowna on all of those? Were they all thrown out or?
Through your worship, I haven't had a chance to delve into them. One thing I will say for council at the beginning of this process, if council ultimately decides to really crack down on short-term rentals and goes as far as you can and opts into the principal residency requirement, and we'll delve into this later on in the project, we will be riddled with legal challenges. We spoke to the province about this when they did the legislation, and they said they'd be challenging us, not you guys. It's not reflective of reality. We will be pulled into every single legal challenge. And as part of the implications with each scenario, staff will detail that, and we will have legal review on this, and we will be delving into the legal precedents more to give council and the community as much information as possible. It's all about transparency, good data, and information to have an informed discussion moving forward. And we're at the very front end of this. This isn't the last time you're going to hear me talk about it. We're going to have lots of discussion moving forward, unfortunately for you guys.
Mr. Gitt.
I just wanted to touch real quick on something Director Simon stated previously to this. If we were putting aside opting in, opting out, if we were to have the discussion and council so chose to change the development rights to increase short-term rentals or decrease, if we were going to be decreasing, one of the things we would have to bring forward to council with that, any bylaw amendments associated with that, would be a request to council to direct cancellation of all the business licenses associated with short-term rentals. It's not something that would be done just, we change zoning regulations, next day every business license canceled. We do have to go through the legal process with spelled out in the bylaw as well. And council would then have to direct us to essentially cancel or terminate or not allow renewing any of those currently active and up-to-date licenses.
Thank you for that. So I've given you all the chance. Councilor Devon, do you want to say one last chance to go around the table? Councilor Stevenson, any other comment? Do you want to put the motion on the table?
I will do so. I move that short-term rental bylaw review project as generally detailed in the report dated October 22nd, 2024, be added to the Development Services Department work plan, subject to approval of the short-term rental project spending request as part of the 2025 budget.
Second for the motion, please. Councilor Lucelle. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Simon. Thank you, Mr. Gipp. Appreciate your input on that. Let's move on here. Pump track request for proposal award. On this, Mr. Nato, do you have anything oversight or presentation prior us to getting into this?
Thank you, Your Worship. No presentation. Happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Okay. Council, does someone want to put this motion on the table? Council Lisa.
I move that the city enter into a contract for services with Bello Solutions to design and construct a pump track at Centennial Park for a contract price of $765,400 plus applicable taxes, and that the chief administrative officer be authorized to execute the contract between the city and Bello Solutions.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Devlin, any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. All right, we're going to go into correspondence. We have a letter from the Roller Derby Association regarding the forum usage. With this letter, Mr. Nato, do you have comments?
Your worship, no, I do not.
Okay, so we have the proponents here, or a couple of them. Any comments from council on the letter as it stands? We're talking about use of the ice surface for our ice hockey and minor hockey. And then we received this letter regarding floor usage. And so we were talking about how we are able to work with this group and how we're able to work with our hockey, and leaving it to staff to work something out. Comment?
Yeah, I believe we left it at it being part of the service level review for the arena.
Right.
And it'll come back to council when completed. I'm correct?
Yeah.
So we have got it. It's on here.
Okay. All right, any other comments from council? Councilor Lano?
Yeah, your worship, regarding this letter I did mention it at the start of the last council meeting. It was sent in prior to that meeting. And since then, in my view, it didn't follow policy on when we include letters on the meeting. It is included this time. There has been some developments since then, including those released from the in-camera meeting today, detailing some changes, and also subsequent finance public meetings. So I'm wondering if the mayor staff is able to provide a summary of the changes, and also suggest inviting those who are here representing Roller Derby Association's chat if they would select to.
Mr. Nato, any further comment based on the statement that Mr. Orlando, Councilor Orlando has said at this point?
Through your worship, I could summarize the request that came through from the Grizzlies and minor hockey if council would like. So in October of this year, we received a request from the two organizations to commence the ice operation earlier than normal. I believe the start date for ice was July 28th versus usually around August 20th, 21st. So that would impact the Roller Derby Association in terms of their last week and a half, I believe, of using the ice facility. So a service level report was presented to council during the budget deliberations, and we discussed potential impacts to that group as well as the potential impacts to the Grizzlies and minor hockey. And the outcome of that was that I was going to loop back with both organizations, the hockey organizations as well as the roller derby group, to see if there is any possibility of working something out between both groups so that each would be somewhat satisfied with the outcome. So I have reached out to both groups, have not come back with anything at this time.
Okay. So at this point in time, I'll let you work that out. So William, Stacy, normally I don't have people discuss their letter here in council, but I'm actually, because Councilor Orlando had brought it up, I'm going to get you to come to the podium, and we'll just ask you a couple questions if you're up for that.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for your presence here and your diligence, and I know that your group has been doing incredible things in our community. So we're into a situation that we will ask Mr. Natter to work with you moving on. But my question is, do you feel comfortable in just stating what's in the letter? Just kind of give us a summary of what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So in the letter, it was in response to the request from Minor Hockey and Grizzlies that was presented to council in September, requesting to have the ice go in earlier in order to have, I believe it's hockey camps that they were running. And one of the comments that was made at council was if other user groups had been consulted on it and how it impacted them. So we took that opportunity to write this letter to be sure that it came back to council of how it did impact our Roller Derby Association and the use of that dry floor space for us to host both games or bouts as well as roller discos, which is a great fundraiser for us and a great opportunity for the community to engage in that kind of activity. So we took that time to write the letter to specifically lay out how that did impact us, as well as one of the limiting factors for our roller derby games is that the arena is literally the only floor space that we can legally hold a game on, or appropriately hold a game on, I should say. So in order to have the track space as well as space for referees, as well as to have spectators in the stands. So that is one of the limiting factors for Revelstoke Roller Derby, and obviously for hockey as well. They can only play hockey where there's ice and in the arena that's there. So that was one of the other pieces that we stated in the letter, as well as it is the only space where we could host our games. But isn't necessarily the only space where we could be practicing, which is something that we've spent many, many years trying to find other floor space to be able to start our season earlier. But for now, we haven't been able to come up with any additional opportunities for being able to do any practices without having that arena space. And so as the Grizzlies continue to do better and better and have more hockeys, you can kind of have this image of this pinching that's happening on either side of Derby, where our season has gone from, at one point we had a 4-month season to a 3-month season. And then if the request had gone through for, or does go through for hockey, then we'd be moving to a 2.5-month season. So it continues to put additional pressures on our association in order to be able to continue. If in the only floor space that we have 2.5 months in order to be able to engage in our activities that we do for roller derby.
Okay, good. I'm going to ask if any councillors have questions of you, and I'm just going to make the comment, have you tried roller skating on ice?
On ice? You actually did try roller skating on ice inside of a giant bubble.
Yeah, it didn't work.
That was one of the halftime game events that we ran, actually. Yeah, you and Steve were both on roller skates.
I don't know if you've ever seen a roller derby match, but it's too violent for us.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. Councillor Chair.
Thanks, Mayor Sauls. I'm looking for a win-win scenario here. How much impact would 2 weeks less on your schedule?
If I do this correctly, through your worship, Councillor Cherry.
You did better than me. I didn't do it properly.
How much of an impact?
It's about training properly before we play a game.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that I was going to say is, how much of an impact does it have? It kind of depends what precedent that starts to set. So we may be able to say that, okay, if we lost 2 weeks, we try to run enough discos and games in the amount of time that we have. And then how much does that continue to go then? So then is the next time it's an additional 2 weeks or an additional 2 weeks, like.
Assuming that it wasn't an additional ask in the future.
It does have a fairly significant impact on us because even again, that it is the only space right now that we are able to practice as well as host games. So there is a minimum amount of time that we need in order to be able to practice. We are already actually running in the opposite season to every other league in BC and Alberta. And so in order to get players to come to play games with us in Revelstoke is a bit of a challenge as well. So if we did have to then push it to having 2 games, at one point we used to hold 3 games. But now that the Grizzlies are doing much better and flying into April, we can only hold 2 games while ensuring the safety of our players and just, engaging in with other communities to come to Revelstoke. So they're not doing back-to-back weekends to have to be coming here, that we're leaving a decent amount of space for players who may be coming for both games that are there too. So that's again where it could have an impact on us, a significant impact, where we then end up having maybe only 1 bout each year. So again, it makes it challenging to recruit people to join roller derby for 1 game a year.
Sure.
Thanks.
And then, so I know that, you're using that shiny floor surface of the arena for your professional skates and safety and that sort of thing. Is there, and I'm asking questions because I'm not literate on roller derby. Can you use an outdoor space for practice?
We potentially could, is there a particular outdoor space that you?
Well, so let's say if we didn't have a flat surface like the tennis court or something like that, are those things a potential? Now, I'm not trying to take away from our tennis, but I'm just asking that because I don't know what you need. And then I'm gonna defer to Mr. Nallo because she's a professional. So.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. There are different services that we could use and that other leagues and roller derby teams use as well. And so we've been having conversations with other leagues to ask what type of flooring that they're on. So we are on the concrete floor right now in the arena. The Armstrong team uses sport court flooring, which I believe is similar to the tennis courts. Again, I'm not exactly sure what type of flooring the tennis courts are made of. Hardwood flooring is another flooring that's used in Calgary. So there definitely are different types of floorings that we can use. And just to share more knowledge about roller skating wheels than you would ever need to know, it has to do with hardness of your wheels. And so sometimes when we go play games for other teams, so some of our players will pick up for other teams, we bring bags of wheels of different hardnesses to adjust to the flooring that's there. How slippery the floor is, how grippy the floor might be.
Oh, okay.
So,
I wasn't
yes.
aware of that. Yeah, thank you.
Now you know.
That's good. Mr. Nato, do you have any comment? I know when I asked about tennis, I probably stepped over my bounds, but I just wanted to ask.
Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of other surfaces and facilities, I am exploring different options for the group to have earlier access to a facility for practice times. It won't assist with their games, but potentially if they practice early, they can host games earlier. So it could all work out in that regard. I'm not able to speak to that at this time because I am waiting for more information to come in to confirm prior to addressing that any further right now. The tennis court is a sport court, so it could work for an outdoor practice.
Okay.
If that is an option or not at this time, I'm not really willing to say. But yeah, I could definitely come back for the next budget conversation with more information on that.
Good, appreciate that. So I'm going to ask council if there's any other comments or questions before we stop this conversation. Councilor Lyon.
Your Worship, I just want to thank Will and Stacy and everyone else in Revelstoke Roller Derby, all volunteers for all of your effort to provide recreation services to the community, to use the space that we have, and for all the great things that you do, including for users and fans who come out to see the shows. I think it's excellent to have those things. I was, disappointed that this was not here earlier so that, as is reflected in the minutes today, budget considerations, we could have heard from you from budget considerations. I've known you guys for years, and I think you know me, and I don't have a challenge with making hard decisions on things, but I think one of the values that's important to me as a community is that we hear everybody out, and we have that. I know that all council received the email with your letter when you sent it. I feel that there could have been an opportunity to have it on council earlier according to policy, but what I see now is staff working with you working with everyone, and council being appraised with the situation. So I think that's a good result, or at least I'm happy with that we continue to work forward and find solutions and make sure that we are engaging and inclusive in the way we do things. But we still face difficult decisions about allocation of resources and budget. So I just want to thank you again for everything you do and for coming here and just say that I'm happy to see sort of happier with the path we're heading on after you present it. So.
Great. Any other comments from council? Councilor Stapleton.
I'll just encourage all of council to go out and attend the roller derby and the disco nights. They're actually quite entertaining. Yeah.
Good.
Are you to be on skates?
Am I able to?
No, I'll be in the ER.
Stacey, one last comment.
As one last comment, I did just want to express that I definitely appreciate that this is a challenging decision to make, and when we are limited to one floor space and that we are exactly in an inverse relationship with hockey, that there's really nothing that can be done much about that in that one space. So appreciate the challenges that are faced with different user groups, and we are very different user groups that are in that space that I believe that council and staff as well, and especially Laurie Donato, has been really engaging a lot with us and working to problem solve with us and being very open to allowing us to have this conversation and to come to the table. And so, and also, as you said, normally wouldn't allow this to have us speak in the meeting since we weren't actually on the agenda. So definitely appreciate that opportunity. So I want to say thank you.
Great. Thanks again for being here. Just encourage you to work with Lori and move through this. Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to item 13B, Revelstoke Humane Society letter request for dog tag and license. Ms. Moore, do you have any comment on this letter?
Through the chair, I do not have any comment on this letter. Should council wish to provide a free dog tag, we could do that through council contingency. And I'll just pass it over to Mr. Jitz to respond to the status of the tags.
All right.
Yes, full support of this. I do think that this seems to be a good, fun thing for the community. The one thing that I would suggest is if you're going to be donating the license with it, we do limit it to a basic license, and then increase, any difference if it was for an aggressive dog or a dangerous dog or anything along those lines, then it would be done through that individual then be responsible for paying the additional. So just as a point of clarity, the cost associated with this for a spayed and neutered dog, we're talking about a $25 license.
Okay, good. Any comments from council on this? Councillor Devlin.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm wildly in support of that. It seems like it would be a good way to get back to the Humane Society without us really having to do anything other than, spending $25, which I think most of us can afford. Yeah, I might even suggest that a basic lifetime wouldn't even be that bad at $85, and then it's kind of more of a draw for the but I'll leave that to staff. But I'm in support of it in general for sure.
All right, do you need a motion, Mr. Gibbs, to move this forward? All right, I'm actually going to make that motion that we give up that #1 dog tag and the basic license for this for the Humane Society, and asking someone to do second. Councillor Cherry, any further discussion on this? All in favor? Motion's carried. Does that work for you, Councillor, or Mr. Gibb? Thank you. All right. Yeah, the motion is right. All right, moving on to communication. We received our first letter from Ministry of Tourism thanking us for being at UBCM and discussing with them priorities and asking for more funding for our wastewater treatment, and the standard letter. We're going into an election and do anything for you at this point. So, and moving into Ministry of Housing, thanking us for the delegation to talk about the Minister of Housing. And again, in the election period, we're in the caretaker mode. And so basically, we're in the same situation.
I got more votes if they were helpful.
Yeah. And then moving into our Communication Multipurpose Facility Advisory Committee minutes. Councilors Cherry and Lucio, you have any comments on those minutes?
We'll let Lucio lead this one as I was attending remotely.
All right.
Yeah, so we got together, we went over the vision and branding that we covered in another meeting, Ready, Set, Go. Laid out project timelines for the group just to put a realistic timeframe on when decisions would be made, construction would start, and the building could be occupied. And then we talked about programming trends when it came to hockey specifically, but we talked about a bunch of different sports and kind of their intake with Canadians and where they could see that going in the future. We talked about a different universal washroom and team change room design for the arena aspect. And I think that was the majority of what we covered in that meeting.
Okay, appreciate it. Any other comments from council on that? Seeing none, I'll just go into Finance Committee meeting of the 9th of October. And we just talked about capital spending initiatives and some of the recommendations that came to council today, and talked about key general capital projects, utility projects in our unfunded list, and most of that stuff has been discussed as we go around the table with Finance Committee, all of council present on that. And then moving on to any comments from council on that. Seeing none, moving on to Royal Stoke Area Economic Development Commission minutes, Councillor Orlando.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I was only able to attend about half the minutes. We had an overlap with the Finance Committee meeting, but I did get an update. I did get the last portion of the meeting and an update from Mr. Watma. Really quickly, we have attended the Economic Development Association of Canada Conference in Edmonton and provided an update to the committee on opportunities and updates from that one. Staff provided a progress report on many initiatives there's involved in, and there's a dozen listed here, so I won't get into those in detail. There was a Rumsfeld Community Forest Corporation tour that some of the committee members attended to get an update. So there was an update to the commission on that. Following up on the tech strategy update, there was survey results presented, and also presentation by Idea Factory staff, overview of what their facility is doing and what the programming is doing. And then finally, there's Economic Development Commission members profile projects. So basically, that's going to be a listing of all of the members and providing a bit of bio information on everyone, the many people involved in the commission, so that everyone knows a little bit more about who's who on the joint commission between the city and the Columbia-Shuswap regional districts. That's it.
Great, thank you. Any comments from council on those minutes? Seeing none, I will ask Ms. Delaselle, do we have any questions from the press?
There are no questions from the press, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'd like to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1A of the community charter. Someone make that motion for me. Councillor Schaefer, Councillor Devlin. All in favor? Motion's carried. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back in camera.
Thank you.
I'll give it to her until we have